Under Merz, it looks to be very different. He's an inveterate transatlanticist, very much a kind of alpha male. These things perhaps shouldn't matter, but they do appear to very much in dealing with Trump. And now the question is whether Merz can persuade Trump that not only Germany is the most serious partner that the Americans should be dealing with within the European Union, but also that the Americans should be dealing with the European Union at all at a kind of institutional level.
After the non-event of the Turkey peace talks, where neither Putin nor Trump actually turned up, it's Germany's turn to get involved. The new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, is meeting Ukraine's President Zelensky in Berlin today. Meanwhile, the German Foreign Minister is in Washington, D.C., making friends with Donald Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. The Times Berlin correspondent Oliver Moody is here with us. Good morning, Oliver.
Good morning.
So let's start with the talks taking place today between the Chancellor and President Zelensky. What are you expecting?
Well, this is necessarily speculative because the Chancellor hasn't even confirmed yet that the visit is going ahead, although it obviously is because half the city has been roped off. But there are certain topics that kind of inevitably suggest themselves. There's a new package of sanctions against Russia that the European Union is currently drawing up with the UK, looking particularly at the cap on the price of Russian oil exports. There are also a lot of issues around how to coordinate the EU and Ukrainian positions on Trump appearing to lose interest in these peace talks and on what to do with the negotiations that are ongoing with Russia. And then finally, the really big topic will be continuing German military aid to Kyiv. The budget got halved by the previous German government. Merz has been much more rhetorically robust when he was in opposition. And now the big question is whether he will deliver these very long-range Taurus cruise missiles and what exactly he meant when he said the other day that the big Western supporters of Ukraine had agreed to lift the range limits on the weapons that they've given Ukraine.
Yeah, seeking clarity there. Oliver, what's your sense of what the German population want?
Well, the polls show pretty clearly, on the one hand, that there is support for sustaining, at the very least, if not increasing, the level of weaponry that Germany has been supplying to the Ukrainians. But on the other hand, there is a very, very strong desire in the German public for peace, for this war just to be over, and a kind of instinct that diplomacy is always the best route out of this kind of conflict. So it's a slightly contradictory picture.
Yeah, it sounds it. You've got these sort of parallel meetings taking place. The German foreign minister sort of making friends with Marco Rubio. What is that relationship like right now between Germany and the US, particularly when it comes to what Germany want to achieve in terms of peace talks with Ukraine?
It's a very interesting one because during Trump's first presidency, Germany was his favourite punchbag, and in particular he singled out the German Chancellor of the day, Angela Merkel, who's from the same party as Friedrich Merz, for a lot of bullying behaviour, partly because in many ways she stood for the sort of antithesis of his style of leadership and was described by Time magazine as the leader of the free world. Under Merz, it looks to be very different. He's an inveterate transatlanticist, very much a kind of alpha male. These things perhaps shouldn't matter, but they do appear to very much in dealing with Trump. And now the question is whether Merz can persuade Trump that not only Germany is the most serious partner that the Americans should be dealing with within the European Union, but also that the Americans should be dealing with the European Union at all at a kind of institutional level, and trying to kind of win him round to the idea that because Putin is increasingly obvious that he's intransigent, the answer is not just to wash his hands of the whole thing, but to come round to supporting Ukraine in the way that the Biden administration previously did, if not more so.
Yeah, that's a tall order.
That is going to be difficult indeed, but we have seen previous interventions from European leaders have had at least a temporary effect. The really obvious one was when the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, who turns out to have been a sort of national golf champion in a previous life, went and played golf with Trump in America and came away with Trump's first condemnation of Putin in public. So I wouldn't be completely pessimistic.
And things have changed a little this week because we had that sort of extraordinary outburst of anger from Donald Trump towards President Putin, calling him absolutely crazy, asking what the hell was he doing. So maybe there's a slight shift in sentiment. We'll keep across that. Oliver, while you're here, obviously here in the UK, there's sort of the repercussions of what happened in Liverpool, where a car drove into crowds after that Liverpool team parade. In Germany, tragically, there's been a repeated problem with terrorist attacks. And I must stress that is not what happened in Liverpool. But in Germany, terrorist attacks with people using cars on public events. What has Germany done to try and make it much more difficult for things like that to happen?
Well, the unfortunate basic insight from the past 10 years of German attempts to deal with this problem is that it's extremely difficult, much as it is to prevent mass stabbings, because cars and knives are everyday objects that can be transformed into deadly weapons, but it's very difficult to anticipate when and where that will happen. The one thing that Germany has developed is, since the Christmas market attack in Berlin in the year 2016 that left a dozen people dead, the worst Islamist terrorist attack in German post-war history, in German history, full stop, in terms of the number of casualties, where a truck was driven over this Christmas market. Every time you hold a large public event, you need to provide the authorities with a really, really detailed security plan, listing all of the measures that you've taken to ensure that a car cannot ram down the people attending. And what that often means in practice is that these events are walled off with crash barriers. If you go to the Christmas markets in Berlin these years, some of them, for example, the LGBTQ one is held in a kind of underpass with security guards on the gates. But it's pretty much impossible for a car to get in. And where there have been these ramming attacks over the past 12 months, most notoriously in Magdeburg just before Christmas, it has been because those security plans have not been implemented precisely as they should have been.
Actually, we were talking about this in the office yesterday. We're quite used to it now, but in central London, there are these sort of big concrete bollards, whether it's down bridges or along roads, and you realise actually they are there to protect you from being killed by someone in a car, either on purpose or by accident. Thank you very much, Oliver, for your insight. The Times Berlin correspondent Oliver Moody on, first and foremost, that meeting today happening between the Chancellor, as Ollie suggested, not completely confirmed, but the sentiment and what you see around the street of the security cordons, that the Chancellor is going to meet with President Zelensky today in Berlin.